Good morning. It's Sunday morning. It's 9 o'clock. And here I am once more with a Sunday thought. Today, I wrote up a title. And to be honest, I forgot exactly what it is. But it's about family because my son is up visiting for this weekend, which is wonderful for me because he gets to do a lot of jobs I have difficulty doing. I just want to say hi to Leroy because he's here already. I've went through, my God box. This little box, if you ever see it, pick it up. It contains wonderful little sayings on all these different cards. And this morning, I picked out this one, which I will read. Each of us is doing the best we can, given our awareness and current knowledge. Where I am right now is a necessary step to where I will be. We surround ourselves with people. Some are family, some are friends. And each one of us has our own belief system, our own decision making, our own awareness one way or another. And what we really want, if we're looking at through the tarot, is this, which is the 10 of Cups. Everybody happy, mom and dad, kids, the river of life's there. Everything is there that you need and require. But we know if you ever have anything to do with family, that the interactions sometimes don't work that way. People have different viewpoints, different ideas, different concepts. And I really like, that's why I'm going to reread this a little bit here. I really like this part. Each of us is doing the best we can. And we forget that very often, especially with people that we care about or we're at odds with or whatever, because family, we know, sometimes gets very large, very big, and sometimes a little cumbersome. And so we have to recognize each one of us is whatever we're going through is doing the best we can. But the second part of that is given our awareness and current knowledge. Sometimes we're not aware of everything that there is. It's just so interesting that I've had a couple of people work with family relationships this last week. And so it's really brought that up. And then with my son being here for this weekend, which also then still family, just not being so isolated. Now, the second part of this, which says where I am right now is a necessary step to where I will be. How do we get awareness? How do we become aware of other people, or we give them even any credit of what they're going through and what they're doing? Very often what happens to us is that we get very self-centered in where we're at, how we feel, and what's going on. And just to reiterate a little bit, one of the things I found very interesting in the work that I was working with this weekend, is that the balance between the mental and the emotional. If you do not have a balance between how your mind's working and how your feeling is, if you might say, overloaded to one side or to the other, what happens is that there is no balance. And it can get very, very scrambly in lots of ways. It also moves into the difference between the feeling and the analytical element as well. So there's a whole part of how does that balance work? If you're not balanced in your mind and your feelings, if you are all mental, trying to figure everything out, or all emotional, overreacting, either way is not going to work very well in emotional relationships, whether they're close or not close, whatever. It's to have that balance between the intellect and then your creativity, which comes from the emotional element. We are complex characters. We have things that'll trigger us really strongly. Now, how come they trigger us? They may trigger us today and not tomorrow, or they may not trigger us today and a week from now they will. So this whole awareness of how we actually balance ourselves, knowing that we are creative, even if you don't think that you are, Knowing that we have an intellect that works. And even though you may not think of that as being an intellect or having a mind that works, you do. And it's like, where does it show up and how? Hang on, I actually, I'm kind of skipping there, sorry. Is that, where do we put the emphasis? Do we put the emphasis on how we feel? Or do we put the emphasis on what we think? The idea is to have a balance between those two so that there is a happy feeling. And making sure that it all works in the direction that you want it to work. Relationships are probably one of the hardest things that you have to deal with because we have close relationships. And even when you have been in a very, very close, like a marriage or a very close relationship for a long time, even then you're going to have discordance at times, different viewpoints. And it's how do you work those through? Or do you this is the way it is, and you get very stubborn and set, and that will create a bigger and a harder problem and an issue for you than you will totally realize. People who are close to you, whether they're a friend, whether they're a family, are important. And to be able to acknowledge and recognize differences without overreacting, without feeling put upon or upset. Nothing is worse somebody that you care about and you can't figure out why they have taken a stand that they've taken. Like, it's like, are you crazy or something? Because we tend to put onto others how we perceive or how we think rather than acceptance. I know I talk a lot about acceptance, but really, and to create a happy, fulfilling life, acceptance needs to be one of the top things. To accept people as they are, to accept situations as they are, and then you decide what you want to do with them. Yes, but at the same point, sometimes we have to broaden the acceptance element out so that we're able to acknowledge and work with and be totally aware. Probably it's one of the hardest things that we have, because when we have belief systems, and many of us have belief systems that are very strict, we accept it, especially if we have a doctrine or an element where we've accepted that and that's it. There's no other alternative. What happens is that we get very, what's the word I want to use? Unsettled if someone else comes with another viewpoint as strong as you have. So now you have two stubborn people, not willing to really discuss, not willing to talk, not willing to accept. And if there's somebody who's really close to you, what happens is that can split apart. And that's sad, because really it's about acceptance, the disagreements, accepting the different viewpoints and being aware of that. I know as a therapist, as a consultant, I have to really put a lot of my own personal ideas right to the side when I'm working with a person, because their viewpoint is important. Their viewpoint is there. And if I can point out that they're not accepting the other side or even themselves, sometimes we have two voices inside, one saying one thing, one saying another, and they knocking heads internally. So it's really about recognizing the mental and the emotional, and where are we? Because if we're responding emotionally, mostly that's danger zone. If we're responding over mentally, with all the analyzing and all that without feeling, that's just crazy. That creates the same thing. So that's why balance becomes so important. How we balance, how we create an equalization with our viewpoints, with our feelings, with our situations, not only for ourselves, because often we have our own fights inside with them fighting each other. So I'm going to read this again so that you can think about this. Each one of us, it's got each of us, I'm just going to say each one of us, is doing the best we can given our awareness and current knowledge. And then the other aspect was, where I am right now is a necessary step to where I will be. I'd like to preface that if you're open, if you can accept where you are and somebody else is, if you can find a bridge to be able to communicate with love, yes, acceptance, most definitely. It all comes down to accepting another person's viewpoint. Doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that's their viewpoint. And to work to understand, what do they really mean by that? What do they really want to achieve? Very often, I have found over the years of consulting with people, is that people don't have an emotional reaction to something, but they don't think of the consequence. They don't think of the outcome or the result. And guess what? Our 10 of Cups tells us we want to be happy for everyone. For everyone. Not for just me, my way, the right way, but for all. How do we fit that in? How do we make that work? How do we go where we need to go? So that's my thought for today. So think about your communication. Think about the people that are important to you. Are you holding on to certain ideas or values tightly? Because that's not going to work. Because if you're holding tightly, someone's going to come along and bang on those for sure. And then you go into isolation. And we don't want to isolate. We want to be embracing, accepting, loving, and working with all. So before I want to say hi to Leroy. It's always good to see you here. To Yvonne, welcome. And to Karen. Karen B., thank you so much. Your support, from my point of view, whether it's my small Sunday thought or the larger Mondays, because I'll be back Monday with mental mind treatments, and which is one of my favorites, yes. And then Wednesday talk. I never know what I'm going to talk about on Sundays, on Wednesdays, but something always comes up. Lots of blessings. Have a great day. It's beautiful weather here. I've got my son visiting. Nothing could be better. Love you all. Bye now.